Racing through Vietcong-held territories toward the untamed plain of reeds, Mike Vincent's squad emerged as an unstoppable force. Mounted on some of the strangest battle vehicles ever seen in warfare, they carved their path through rivers, mangrove swamps, and sawgrass hummocks at a staggering 70 miles per hour, their air-cushioned vehicles defying terrain that even helicopters couldn't land on. With menacing shark's teeth painted across their bows, these hovercrafts bore down on the enemy like nightmarish land-and-sea metal sharks. Suddenly, a chilling report crackled over the radio from the last hovercraft in line. They'd just hit a landmine. Alarms went off, yet the situation left them no choice but to barrel forward. Halting meant becoming easy prey for lurking enemy patrols. Despite the circumstances, they pressed on. Upon finally securing a moment to assess the damage, Vincent's astonishment was palpable. The craft bore a few superficial holes. He later reflected on the incident, quote, "It takes more than that to stop a skimmer at 60 knots. From the beginning, Vincent believed fiercely in the capabilities of these hovercrafts, envisioning them as the ultimate tanks of the Vietnam War, unparalleled in speed and versatility. Quote, "As long as the engine keeps running, there isn't anything you can't do with the craft." In the early chapters of the Vietnam conflict, Lieutenant Mike Vincent found himself at the helm of a groundbreaking yet daunting task. Serving as the executive officer for the Patrol Air Cushion Vehicles, or PAC-Bs, his orders were to put an unconventional piece of military hardware through its paces. The armored hovercraft, a behemoth capable of blistering speeds of 70 miles per hour, was designed to skim over rivers and seas and navigate through marshes, jungles, and desolate wastelands. At the outset, Vincent and his crew cast a skeptical eye on their assignment. They couldn't shake the feeling that they'd been cast as guinea pigs for what appeared to be a floating fortress, yet simultaneously a potential death trap. The hovercraft's design did little to allay these fears. Dubbed by the men as giant, cumbersome pancakes, these vessels were as loud as they were ungainly. They seemingly served up an open invitation to enemy forces with a "shoot me" sign. The sheer bulk and noise of these crafts painted them as easy prey in the dense, unpredictable combat zones of Vietnam. Called PAC-Bs by their crewmen, these heavily armed, awkward-looking machines were originally made in England by the Saunders Roe division of Westland Aircraft. Their original name was SRN-5 hovercraft. They were modified and fitted with standard U.S. components in the process of Americanization by Bell, which had the U.S. license to manufacture them. Bell named the vehicle SK-5 hovercraft, but the U.S. military later officially designated it as the Patrol Air Cushion Vehicle. They were packing twin 50-caliber machine guns, poised and ready in a turret on the cabin roof, alongside two 7.62mm machine guns on helicopter-style mounts, blazing away from the side windows. High-res radar came standard on the SK-5s, letting these air cushion vehicles slice through the night in complete darkness. The machines were massive, stretching 39 feet in length, nearly matching the size of a typical school bus, and spanning 24 feet in width, about as broad as a large SUV. They were powered by a powerful General Electric gas turbine, which churned out 1,150 horsepower. The engine was a powerhouse, not much different from those used by jet aircraft, and also ran on kerosene jet fuel. This remarkable engine performed a dual function. It propelled the hovercraft forward by spinning a 9-foot diameter propeller at the rear, but also drove a 7-foot-wide fan situated directly beneath the craft, like a turbocharged leaf blower blasting air downward. This created an air cushion for the SK-5 to glide on, like a jet-powered magic carpet. The air was pushed into a chamber and then expelled through narrow slots around the hovercraft's perimeter. This configuration captured a bubble of compressed air beneath the flat base of the craft, elevating it above the surface. Rubber skirts extended from the sides to keep this air cushion stable and robust, allowing the SK-5 to hover about 4 feet off the ground or water. Thanks to these flexible and versatile rubber skirts, the SK-5 didn't merely hover. It could smoothly sail over obstacles up to 5 or 6 feet tall and navigate choppy waters like a breeze. A fallen tree or a large boulder in the way were no obstacles for the SK-5 hovercraft. For steering, it used twin rudders located in the airstream, propelled by its massive rear propeller. These rudders pivoted to navigate the hovercraft, steering it left or right by catching and redirecting the powerful jet of air, much in the way a boat's rudder operates in water. As Vincent and his crew dug into the nuts and bolts of the hovercraft at the Navy's Fleet Amphibious Base in Coronado Beach, California, during their training session before heading to Vietnam, skepticism began to melt away. The craft was nothing short of impressive, handling with an unexpected grace. How it would maneuver through the tangled waterways and marshes of Vietnam remained to be seen. On November 20th, 1966, Operation Quai Phat, named after the Vietnamese word for monster, kicked off, putting the hovercrafts through their paces in actual combat. The crew, aiming to strike fear into the enemy's heart, painted their PAC-Bs with menacing grins, each bearing the image of a shark's teeth. The PAC-Bs rolled out daily, hitting targets mapped out by a Special Forces intelligence officer. A typical PAC-B crew comprised 1 or 2 officers and 4 enlisted men. The cabin held room for 4 additional men, space often reserved for enemy prisoners. Moreover, the craft's plenum chamber often ferried outriders, Special Forces and Vietnamese troops picked up en route. Operating as a squadron, the 3 PAC-Bs often joined forces with helicopters, which scouted ahead, directing the skimmers toward points of interest. At times, the hovercrafts found themselves swamped in vegetation, towering over their 16-foot radar masts, relying on helicopters to navigate the thick elephant grass. Although dense woodlands were a no-go, these mud sailors found they could bulldoze through groves of young trees no thicker than a couple of inches and reaching heights of 20 feet. A report from the time summarized the typical hovercraft operation. It described a Huey helicopter carving through the air above a marsh near Saigon, eyes peeled for the well-camouflaged sampan, a flat-bottomed boat favored by the Viet Cong skulking beneath the brush. Upon spotting the target, the helicopter crew would launch a smoke grenade to mark the location. Seizing the signal, a towering hovercraft would barrel toward the concealed vessel for a blitz attack. The hovercraft's gunners, manning their 50 caliber machine guns, would let rip, eliminating several occupants of the slower, defenseless sampan. Those plucked from the water were destined to be prisoners. Still, in the deep swamp of Vietnam, the hovercraft crews would face the ultimate test. During Operation Quai Phat, on November 22nd, Vincent and his team ventured deep into a dense, shadowy marsh where the sun struggled to pierce the gloom, illuminating the murky waters below. Here, the PAC-B served as part of a unified force, and their objective was to storm a heavily defended village. Navigating through the marsh toward the enemy stronghold, they encountered a sizable Viet Cong contingent emerging from the swamp, scrambling towards the village's safety. The crew aboard the American hovercrafts engaged the Viet Cong fiercely. However, many of the enemy combatants managed to slip away into the village's protective embrace. The adversaries' fortifications, constructed of wooden walls, posed little challenge to the PAC-Bs, which had proven themselves effective battering rams, adept at easily demolishing walls, huts, and light fortifications. Lieutenant Lenzer, present during the assault, recounted the subsequent action, quote, "We turned, and the PAC-Bs made 2 high-speed runs, shooting into the village with our twin 50s. We fired approximately 2,000 rounds per craft that day. There were branches flying all around, and the windows were open for the machine gunners. It got pretty wild sometimes, plowing through those trees at 45 knots. The hovercrafts crashed through the village's wooden barriers. From the windows and rooftops of the local huts, the enemy unleashed a barrage of gunfire at Vincent and his men. Thankfully, the PAC-B's armor provided significantly more protection than the flimsy cover afforded to their adversaries. Lenzer detailed a particular exchange during the fray, quote, "We were getting the fire back from a window in this fortification. My gunner estimated it to be 30 caliber machine gun fire. He fired into the blast of the muzzle flash and silenced it. A Special Forces captain in the airboats closer in said our gunner apparently split this machine gun right down the middle." In the course of Operation Quai Phat, the PAC-Bs were officially recognized for eliminating 23 Viet Cong combatants. They destroyed 71 sampans, 71 land-based structures, and a printing press used for disseminating communist propaganda. Additionally, 194 bunkers were identified and cleared. The PAC-B units also took 11 Viet Cong soldiers prisoner, seizing a haul of weapons and ammo, 6 outboard motors, and 60 pounds of documents. Remarkably, not a single member of the PAC-B unit sustained injuries throughout the deployment in Vietnam. This exceptional record is attributed to the hovercraft's swift speed and agility, rendering them difficult targets despite their considerable size. For Vincent and his men, the PAC-Bs had shown their worth, and they had what was needed to become the ultimate vehicle on the battlefields of Vietnam. Still, time had another story to tell. The initial deployment of the PAC-Bs in Vietnam was met with extraordinary success. Despite being limited to a handful of crews and no more than 6 hovercrafts operational at any given time, the results logged by Vincent and his fellow operators of these unique vehicles were consistently positive. For the enemy, these swift strike machines quickly became a significant nuisance. Their rapid, aggressive maneuvers and distinctive nose art earned them the moniker monsters from the Viet Cong, a testament to their imposing presence and fearsome reputation. However, this infamy was short-lived. It soon emerged that the early victories were somewhat misleading. The pack bee's effectiveness hinged on the element of surprise, which was compromised by two major drawbacks: the excessive noise generated by their engines and persistent maintenance issues. These shortcomings became the pack bee's Achilles heel. Vietnam veteran Bruce Wesson shared a revealing insight, quote, "Later, as we interviewed villagers with our interpreter, they told us that they heard us coming long before we arrived on the rice fields." The irony was stark. The technological marvel that endowed the pack bees with the ability to skim over any terrain at breakneck speeds was also their greatest vulnerability. The racket they produced, often outdoing that of an American helicopter, became a telltale sign for the Viet Cong. This acoustic signature allowed the enemy to prepare for an ambush well in advance or to evacuate the area long before the hovercrafts would arrive. The vehicles, powered by massive jet engines with propellers situated underneath, became logistical nightmares regarding maintenance. The susceptibility of propellers and skirts to damage and the unsustainable costs of frequent replacements posed significant hurdles. Moreover, while the hovercrafts excelled at navigating virtually any terrain and gliding over small to medium obstacles, their performance was contingent upon the flatness of the terrain. Given their mode of flight over ground or water, the absence of traction or resistance meant that even slightly steep terrain significantly hampered their mobility. In such situations, the hovercraft crews found themselves longing for the capabilities of track tanks. Despite their initial impressive performance, the deployment of pack bees in Vietnam ultimately proved unsustainable. Of the 6 hovercraft deployed to the region by the Army and Navy, only 1 from each branch survived the conflict. The Army's remaining hovercraft now resides as a historical exhibit at the Army Transport Museum in Virginia, serving as a tangible reminder of the innovative yet ultimately limited role these monsters played in the Vietnam War.